the system has been built on this giant fraud, and to a degree, the people have been somewhat pacified with television, and they're entertaining themselves to death. There's no way about it until the people say, "Hey, I'm going to get involved. I'm going to figure out what's really going on, and I'm going to, act accordingly." Then I don't think anything is going to happen.
Welcome back to this week's episode of The Feds. I am Stephanie Weidel. Before we begin, and if you enjoy our podcast, please go ahead and like, comment, subscribe to, and most importantly, share these episodes. Find us on social media, on X, Facebook, and Instagram. Do check out our new Feds for Freedom Substack, where you can find some great articles written by our own members. And don't forget to check out our website at fedsforfreedom.org. This week's episode is sponsored by a.k.a. Farms. Ever wish you could turn back the clock and get food like it used to be? Like it was about 200 years ago? There were barely any chemicals or drugs back then. Farmers worked with the land instead of against it. Animals were always outside. Food was pure, simple, and uncomplicated. This is exactly what a.k.a. Farms is about. It's why they started regenerative farming in the mountains of Romney, West Virginia. a.k.a. Farms has a large selection of raw dairy for you and your pets too. Pastured eggs, grass-fed and finished beef, pastured pork, corn and soy-free chicken, and more. They follow all the natural standards. No antibiotics, no hormones, no GMOs, just natural food. a.k.a. Farms ships to all 48 lower states. For more information and to start shopping, visit AAAfarming.com. Use the coupon code FEDSFREEDOM for 10% off your first order. a.k.a. Farms, pure, simple food, like it was 200 years ago.
Welcome to the Feds, insiders bringing accountability, integrity, and reform to a broken bureaucracy. At Feds for Freedom, we value constructive dissent and healthy debate. The views and opinions shared in today's episode are those of the speaker alone and do not express the views or opinions of the U.S. government or any other employer.
This week, we are joined by Etienne de Boetie squared. Etienne is the author of the book Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed, and is the founder of the Art of Liberty Foundation. He is an internationally recognized expert and speaker on voluntaryism and government corruption. He is also the editor of the Art of Liberty Substack pages. In his book, he breaks down how intergenerational organized crime centered around banking and central banking is robbing and controlling the population using the technique of government with puppet politicians and monopoly media and academia. Thanks so much for coming on with us today, Etienne.
It's a pleasure to be with you and your audience.
So I wanted to discuss with you the deep state, the central banking, CBDCs, all about this. Let's dive into the history right now. What circumstances gave rise to the invisible government behind the scene government?
So I think it would be like, just to kind of set the table, my name is Etienne de Boetie squared. I'm a voluntaryist author of a book called Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed, where I make the case that government was never really intended to protect life, liberty, and property, but it can be best thought of as a technique for robbing and controlling society. You don't really need a government. Everything the government does can be done better, faster, cheaper by the free market, by mutual aid societies, by nonprofits, by genuine charities. And you can never, ever have a legitimate government. And the reason you can never have a legitimate government is because it's impossible to delegate rights that you do not possess yourself to a representative or to a government to exercise on your behalf. So if I don't have the ability to take Stephanie's money and give it away to charity or make up rules for Stephanie myself, I can't delegate a right I don't have myself to a representative. You can't be bound by a social contract that you didn't sign. And if my girlfriend and myself can't vote to rob Stephanie because there's two of us and one of Stephanie, well, it doesn't matter if there's three of us or four of us or 330 million of us. There's no magical additional person that makes something that is immoral and illogical now moral and logical. And so in the book, I kind of break down the tricks and the techniques that governments use, not just to get obedience, but to get fealty and adoration in the population. And to answer your question, one of the main ways that society has been controlled and robbed by government has been in the monetary system. And so if you think about if I have a dollar and you have a dollar, dear listener or dear viewer, and we have the only $2 in the world, and a central bank or a bank comes along, or a government comes along and either creates two more dollars using fractional reserve banking or using stimulus or quantitative easing or printing it on a printing press, then you and I have been reduced to 25% of the world's wealth. And the bank has come and stolen 50% of the world's wealth. And that's really, really what we've been up against. It's like playing Monopoly where the banker is cheating, the banker's reaching under the table and stealing $500 bills when nobody is looking. And at the end of the game, who owns everything on the board and who are renters and debtors? And the first thing the banks bought was the monopoly media. So they bought up and monopolized the media so that the media isn't telling society what's really going on. The media is just deceiving and distracting society with a bunch of things that don't really matter, while the bankers are stealing the value out of everybody's money in a way that most people don't really understand because it's not taught in the mandatory government school.
So you're saying the entire monetary system right now is basically an illusion.
Well, I mean, it's there, and it's working right now, but the problem is that it's built on a deceit, this debt-based monetary system that can never ever be paid off because the money is coming into existence as debt, and so you can never ever create enough money to pay off money that is coming into the system as debt. And so kind of the basics of the fraud are when you go to a bank to get a car loan or a mortgage, they're not lending you depositor money. What they do is they just tickle the ivories on the keyboard and they credit your account with digital dollars. And then you spend the rest of your life paying off a loan that was created out of thin air, by these bankers. And that system is inherently inflationary. So the more and more the banks create money, or the Fed creates money alongside the banks using quantitative easing and creating money for the stimulus and the bailouts of COVID, or the bailouts for Wall Street, or for whatever it is that the government is creating, money for using quantitative easing, borrowing. As all of these excess dollars come into existence, they began to compete with the existing dollars that people have earned and saved, and it begins bidding up prices. And that's why you're seeing the cost of everything go up. Now, the cost of everything is going up is simultaneously reducing the purchasing power of everybody that earned and saved dollars. And so it's a way of stealing the value out of everybody else's money. And that's that's really the inherent dishonesty of the system, is that as the banks are allowed to create this money out of thin air, it's reducing the purchasing power of the money that people earn and save.
So how do we stop this from happening?
Well, the main thing is you got to educate, people as to what's really going on. And that's what I'm trying to do in, Government, the Biggest Scam in History. And I actually made it into a paper, like a little bit of like a picture book. And that, we have a lot of visualizations that explain how the fractional reserve banking system works, or if you try to tell your friends and your family and your neighbors that there's sick on the old media side, okay, newspapers, television stations, radio stations, etc. If you tried to tell your friends and family that there were 6 companies running hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of subsidiaries so that nobody understands that it's just like 6 companies at the top, they may or may not believe you. But if you show them one of the visualizations in Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed, all of a sudden they can see it with their own eyes. They can understand, oh, News Corp, which owns Fox News, it's not that they just own Fox News, that they own 175 different newspapers, that they own other, magazine publishing companies. They own satellite networks like Sky News in the UK and like global, satellite networks. They own book publishing companies. But they're all being operated under different names, different logos, so that nobody realizes that the media has really been monopolized in this way. And so what I've tried to do is I've tried to make it, easy to understand by kind of drawing society a picture where they can go, oh, that's how they're doing. I did not understand that was going on. And then once people understand that the media is being monopolized, that Google is lying to you algorithmically, where they're algorithmically censoring information that you receive, that like once people understand that that's going on, that's half the battle. Then they're kind of in the fight. They've got some understanding of how the magician is pulling the trick.
We're going to unpack all of this right now. So we definitely see that there is this deep state. There is this invisible behind the visible government. We know that strings are being pulled. We know we're given an illusion of choice, like with the presidential candidates or with the COVID shots. With all of this, there's this illusion. We know that the banking system has something to do with it. So we're going to unpack this right now. So let me ask, before we go back to my original question, let's go into the history. But what moves have you seen by the Federal Reserve recently that have caused you concern?
Well, I'll tell you, I look at Fed policy as the Fed and the Treasury and the government waging economic warfare against the population to keep them artificially poor. And one of the things that people need to understand is that if we had a honest monetary system, and if you just go back to where we had, gold and silver that couldn't be printed on a printing press in kind of the early days of the country, that your dollar should be buying more and more every single year as innovations and productivity improvements reduce the cost of manufacturing, distributing the necessities and luxuries of life. And so instead of everybody's dollar buying more and more and more every year, and people getting wealthier and wealthier and having more to donate to charity and having more to, improve the quality of life of their family, we're not only being, we're not only having that stolen, but we're seeing our money lose value every single year. And so absent this crooked monetary system, we'd all be very, very wealthy, and we would have more than enough surplus to take care of the poor, the needy, and the disadvantaged. But what I believe is that this, you can call it the deep state. I call it intergenerational organized crime. And so it's intergenerational organized crime centered around banking and central banking that is robbing and tax farming the population. They're sliding the money out the back in a variety of ways. The banks are making obscene profits by being able to loan money, that they create out of thin air at interest. That's the majority of how these profits are being made. That profit, the money that they create out of thin air, some of that is being given to cartel companies, affiliated companies that are operating as essentially an organized crime cartel. They're being given unlimited amounts of money to be able to buy up and consolidate their own industries. And then those companies that are being given this unlimited fractional reserve banking capital, they're operating as a monopolistic cartel in a kind of predatory way, which is why you see a level of consolidation that corporations have that they would not have absent the crooked monetary system. So the crooked monetary system allows the banks to give unlimited capital to certain companies that buy up and consolidate their own industries so that you have these ridiculous monopolies, duopolies, and triopolies. And so it would be obvious if the bankers just bought everything in all the companies in the world and then gave, and then you only had to do business with, their one bank or their one company. So they leave, 2 to 3 companies to give you the illusion of choice. You can go to Lowe's or Home Depot for your hardware supplies. You can go to Target or Walmart. You can get Coke or Pepsi. You can go to Staples or Office Depot for your office supplies. So it's the illusion of choice. You can go to Sam's Club or you can go to Costco for your bulk goods. You can get a chip for your computer from Intel, or you can get it from AMD. I could go on and on. I think you can go to sports. You can go to Dick's. Like there's it's the illusion of choice. But if you take a look and unpack the ownership, frequently BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street Capital own the majority of both of those competitors. So it has been the illusion of choice. How did we get this way? Well, it's obviously the banks are creating this money out of thin air. They're giving it to these certain companies. And then those companies are being organized in the World Economic Forum. So the C-level executives of the companies are being organized in front organizations like the World Economic Forum, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group, the Trilateral Commission, where they're able to meet and are on a yearly or even more frequent basis in secure facilities around the world that have been swept for bugs, where they're given their marching orders. But that's essentially the system. It's the banks at the top. They're buying up the world with their little paper tickets and digital dollars, and we're paying, even though that system is stealing the value out of everybody else's.
You described a society and a culture that, I'm kind of used to. You go to like Sam's Club or Costco, and we chose Costco. Mm-hmm. But what would it look like if we didn't have those choices? If we didn't have that kind of illusion of choice, what would it look like?
So if the banks weren't able to create money out of thin air and kind of pick the winners of society, then you'd have way more choices. There wouldn't be the same domination of fast food chains where when you're going down the highway, you can eat it. You can eat it like 5 or 6 different fast food places at every single exit. There would be way more mom and pop restaurants. There would have been way more economic diversity. People would be paid more because the businesses would have to compete with labor. And so that you'd see, so a lot of times the Fed's policies are stifling economic activity in the United States because they want to take away the punch bowl, because they're constantly, either flooding the economy with money or then raising interest rates and trying to cut back to stop the problems that occurred when they flooded the economy with money. And so you'd have more economic stability. Businesses would feel more comfortable in investing in the long term because they know that the dollars that they get back are going to be worth the same as the dollars they invest. So there'd be more, I think more economic activity, more long-term investment. You wouldn't see the same business cycle that you see right now. Right now, the Fed can flood the economy with money, and then take away the punch bowl, they know when they're going to take away the punch bowl. So it allows the insiders at the Federal Open Market Committee to make investments. It allows the bankers to be able to, they know when the punch bowl is going to be removed. And so a lot of times people that saw all this economic activity, they invested, they bought plant, property, and equipment. They built that new factory to produce this new widget because they thought that the economy was strong. Well, now all of a sudden the economy is weak. They can't service their loan. And so the bank comes and is able to, call that loan or repossess that factory. And so this thing that we call the business cycle is really stifling the overall economic progress and security of, for everybody, everybody concerned. It's bad for business. It's bad for individuals. It's like having a free market where all the growth is natural and organic is going to give you a strong economy, more diverse economy, where everybody is going to benefit because people are going to be hiring more and more people. They're going to be bidding up the cost of labor. That means everybody gets more money for the work that they do. The money goes further. So because the dollars aren't losing value, not only are you making more money, but your dollar is buying more and more every single year. That's the path to prosperity. What we have is an organized crime monetary system run by the banks on the top that are robbing society, and the government is helping because the government is tax farming everybody alongside this confiscatory, inflationary monetary system.
So obviously, as citizens, we want a stable economy. BlackRock and Vanguard, you're saying would support a non-stable economy but what's the end goal? Why would they want a non-stable economy?
Because you can steal money. You can steal the value out of what people are creating and building, if you have the ability to create a boom bust business cycle. And so if you know when the booms are going to happen and when the busts are going to happen, then you're able to kind of cheat and time your investments or give capital to businesses that aren't in on it, so that then during the bust, you can go ahead and you can repossess that new factory they built, and then you own the factory the next time you want to turn the boom cycle on again. And so the boom bust business cycle gives the folks at like BlackRock and the banks at the top an advantage over the people at the bottom of, we'll call it the monetary pyramid. The way that money comes into existence right now, there's a thing called the Cantillon effect, where those that are closest to the monetary creation benefit the most, and the people, the trickle down people, they benefit the least. And so as that new money comes into creation at the top of the banking pyramid, the people that get it first have the most spending power. It's going to be worth the absolute most. So they spend it first, they get full value out of that spend. And then each additional cycle, as it goes down, as it trickles through the rest of society, the value that money is able to buy is less and less and less. And so the whole system is really rigged against the average person, versus in a true free market economy, the average person would be benefiting the most. But instead, they're getting treaded on by the bank. The banker's cheating, just like my example about playing Monopoly with the banker cheating. Right now, the banker is cheating and he's buying up everything on the boards, and the people are left to be renters and debtors.
So who are the companies besides BlackRock and Vanguard that are at the epicenter of this?
Well, I mean, it's the money center banks. So the Federal Reserve is a creature of the money center banks. When I say money center bank, these are international banking houses. This is the Goldman Sachs, the J.P. Morgan Chases, the Bank of America, Citigroup. The big major banks are the ones that are able to create this money out of thin air using a technique called fractional reserve banking. So the banks created the Federal Reserve, and in 1913, so in essence, the United States has had three different central banks. They had the first bank in the United States, which had a 20-year charter, and it was proven to be corrupt. And like at the end of the charter, they threw the bankers out. Then you had the second bank in the United States. It had a 20-year charter, and this is the bank that Andrew Jackson famously said, "You are a den of vipers. I will help you out." And at the end of that 20-year charter, Jackson was the president, and it came up to him to throw it out, and he threw the bankers out again because they were corrupt and they were, using the Bank of the United States to rob the population. And so then they waited a little bit and they came in with the Federal Reserve in 2013. But what the Federal Reserve does is the Federal Reserve backstops the banks to engage in this fractional reserve banking. And so for them to be able to lend out money that they don't have, they need to have a central bank that sits there and says, "Oh, you're now in financial trouble. I'm going to give you money and support your crooked bank to maintain solvency in the system and faith in this crooked, banking system." And so the banks created the Federal Reserve to allow them to engage in this fractional reserve banking, which they wouldn't be able to do absent the central bank enabling it. And so this is how government is used to rob and control the populations. There wouldn't be a central bank if it wasn't for government. And so that's why it's the banks and government and the media working together to be able to steal the value out of everybody's money in a way that most people really don't understand how it's going on, because they're not going to teach that to you in your mandatory government school.
That's right. All right. So we're seeing a tremendous financial shift right now. I mean, just over the weekend, we saw the Japanese stock market crash. We saw Lockheed Martin stock just astronomically spike, and nothing else was really going up. It's just so a lot of things are going on in the financial sector right now. But we've seen it for the past couple years that basic things like housing, food have risen astronomically. So what does it all mean, and what's going on here?
So with the stock market and with the cost of housing, it's not so much that, absent hot stocks or hot housing markets, it's not that the value of your home or your portfolio is going up. It's that the amount of dollars that it takes to buy the same amount of stocks or the same amount of housing is greater. And so what you're seeing isn't so much appreciation in your portfolio or in the cost of your house as much as the theft of the value of the dollars that underlie those investments. And so that's really, really what's going on. Is the United States is having to finance ridiculous $3 trillion plus deficits. They're having to go to the markets. They're having to borrow that. And I don't believe, this is just my own speculation, but I don't believe that people are still willing to loan the government money at the same rate. And so what they're having to do is the Fed is having to make straw purchases of dollars where they're participating in the market as a third party to buy the Treasury bills, bonds, and notes. And so I think there's other participants that are seeing that that's going on right now, and they're starting to say, "Hey, the United States is starting to look shaky. They're cheating. They're not able to really finance these deficits. They're printing money with no abandon. There's nobody, in a kind of, the U.S. government is being operated as kind of like a organized criminal enterprise, okay, where the citizens are being tax farmed, and that money is going out the back door to the Lockheed Martins, and to the military industrial complex companies for wars we don't need to be involved in, that are being engineered for the purpose of selling the weapons and for the purpose, for other purposes. And so I think the world is starting to kind of wise up to what's going on in the United States. And that's why you're seeing so much, turmoil in the markets, as people like really, really big players are starting to move their bets around the table. And maybe they're starting to take off some of the bets that they had on the U.S. economy as they see all this fraudulent economic activity.
Do you think that some of the shifting that we've seen just like over the weekend might be a good thing?
Well, I mean, the one good thing is that the market is a really dynamic system, and that it's able to, in some ways it's able to stabilize itself and recalibrate itself as economic information gets dispersed to all these different layers. And so it really is very, very robust, which is a good thing for people. And so when people say, "Hey, I'm losing money on my dollar denominated investments," they can take some of those off the table, and they can, buy gold, they can buy silver, they can buy non-inflationary cryptocurrencies, they can buy, other assets, so that they're not taking the same bath on their dollar denominated assets. And so like that is to somewhat, that's a good dynamic. There's a lot of economic misallocation where the money is being, given to these weapons contractors, and like we're wasting all of this money on stuff that we don't really need to be spending it on. Generally, because the
Absolutely.
government is wasting, just trillions and trillions of dollars. If that money wasn't being misallocated, if it was being put into plant, property, and equipment to satisfy the wants and desires of the people and invest in what the people want instead of what politicians and military industrial complex CEOs want, the country would be, far wealthier than we are today. There's just so much misallocation and so much theft. And, that's really what's killing the country, is this theft and misallocation.
If our economy is built on something that's not tangible, but just kind of a belief that something exists. I mean, when is enough enough? When are we going to see the people rising and saying something and changing the way that business is done? Where do you think things are going to go in society?
So unfortunately, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, because the system has been built on this giant fraud, and to a degree, the people have been somewhat pacified, with television, and they're entertaining themselves to death. There's not, there's no way about it until the people say, "Hey, I'm going to get involved. I'm going to figure out what's really going on, and I'm going to, act accordingly." Then I don't think anything is going to happen. The thing that generally makes people stand up and take notice is some kind of, like I'm worried about a dollar devaluation. I'm worried about even potentially a currency collapse. I hope that that's not what it is, but like that's the level, those are some of the potential outcomes. You can't just keep creating dollars out of thin air forever and expect them to retain their purchasing power. Voltaire said, eventually all paper money returns to its intrinsic worth zero. And that is really the danger of having an unbacked, currency issued by, private companies that are, being dishonest about the legitimacy of that system.
When people do wake up and when people do become aware and want to do something, what can they do?
Well, I mean, some of the things that I like to recommend is number one, I just use cash. And so I think that we're at the end of the dollar system, and you're seeing the central banks start to set the table to move the population into something called a central bank digital currency. A central bank digital currency is a little bit like cryptocurrency in the sense that it'll be cryptographically secure, but unlike the decentralized nature of most cryptocurrencies, you're talking about something that will be issued by the central banks themselves and will essentially be programmable money. And so the central banks not only will be able to control the amount of currency and who gets it, but they'll be able to control who can buy and sell in the economy by being able to turn off individual wallets and individual bank accounts at will, and they'll be able to control what's done with those programmable central bank digital currencies. So they could say, hey, you can't spend it outside of your 15-minute city. Hey, you can't spend it on meat. You can't spend it on protest activities. You can't spend it, in a variety of different ways that would kind of cement their power. And so I think the number one thing that people can do is to keep cash alive and to say, hey, we're going to have physical cash in the economy. We're not going to go all digital. And that's generally, don't do business with businesses that are going cashless. Pay cash whenever you can. And when you pay cash, number one, you're helping the businessman that usually has to pay, 1.5 to 2.5% or more of that sale to a bank in the form of the merchant fee for the credit card transaction. But so number one, the merchant, you've got more, the merchant has more money to be able to, send his kid to a guitar lesson or put his kids into, a sports camp or something like that, which is good for the local economy. But at the same time, you're starving the bank and you're allowing the merchant to keep more of his money by not having to turn it over to the lying, thieving, stealing government in the form of of taxation as well. So you're allowing him to keep that cash off the books. So it's good for the local economy. It's good for you. Typically, if you're paying cash, you can get a discount. From the merchant. A lot of times they'll kick you back that 2 to 3% if you're paying cash. So it's good for you. It's good for the merchant. It's good for the local economy. It starves the banks and it starves the government.
What is happening to small rural banks with high capitalization? Are they being systematically, swallowed up by larger banks?
Yeah, and we have a poster series that we call the White Rose Mucho Grande. And in that poster series, one of the posters shows the monopolization of the banking series. We show actually the monopolization of everything: soft drinks, beer, airlines, seed companies, consumer goods. Like there's a poster for each one of those sectors that I just mentioned, but there's one defense contractors as well. But in the banking on the banking poster, you can actually see where there were a couple of decades ago there were around 30 major bank players, and over the past 20 plus years, those 30 plus bank players have essentially consolidated down to 4. In the defense sector, there were 30 plus major players that have consolidated down to 4. In the consumer goods and food product poster, you can see dozens and dozens and dozens of individual brands and brand segments that have now consolidated down to about 10. I already used the example of the media. There were 50 plus major media companies just 30 years ago, and they've now consolidated down to 6. And so you would not see this level of monopolization and consolidation if the banks weren't providing unlimited capital to favored cartel companies to buy up and dominate their own industries. So you're seeing this very, very unnatural level of consolidation and monopolization that is really the product of this crooked organized crime monetary system and the banks, criminal banks at the top who are using this capital to puppeteer the government and puppeteer the media and to make sure that the media never tells you about it.
Yeah, these are all connected, and 30 years ago we had more choices, perhaps maybe a little going back a little further, but more choices politically, and now it's down to this. So it's all intertwined. Would our economy benefit if we chose to transfer our funds to smaller banks, the ones that keep higher capitalization rates? And does that permit further greater financial freedom?
Yeah, well, you would definitely, I tell you, you definitely have a more stable or like secure economy than empowering these mega banks. These mega banks are way, way, way too big, and they're doing things with their money in the derivatives market and in the in a variety of unbacked financial assets that are dangerous to the economy overall. And so by kind of spreading it out and not doing business with these mega banks at the top of the pyramid that are funding the World Economic Forum and funding the Council on Foreign Relations, funding the Trilateral Commission, and whose executives are participating in the Bilderberg meetings, you're definitely starving the beast at the top at the same time that you're ensuring that there's that the bank in your community is more likely to loan to you than one of the big banks, and that money is going to stay in the community. And so it would be definitely better. I did want to touch on one thing you said, because one of the things you said was we'd have more choices politically, and I believe that what we've got right now is we've got a fake choice between government blue and government red, where if you really take a look at the policies of Trump and Biden, they're 100% aligned with the interests of the banks on the top. They're 100% in favor of fractional reserve banking. They're 100%, and both of them are 100% aligned on fractional reserve banking. They're 100% aligned on confiscatory taxation. They were 100% aligned on the COVID and the scam of the COVID. They're 100% aligned on the things that are important to the banks, and then they kind of fight over little, called football issues that don't really, matter to the real, ruling class of the society. But they're both 100% aligned in the interests of this organized crime monetary system and the banks on top.
So what does that mean for us as average American citizens?
That you're not going to be able to vote your way out of tyranny. And so voting is this kind of fake way of overthrowing the government where Biden can leave the borders wide open until everybody's absolutely furious at him, and they're seeing the impact in their community, and it's they're mad and they want something done, and so they vote for puppet number 2, and they release that releases it's like a steam valve for society where they think, oh, we've thrown the bums out, but really they just put in puppet number 2, and puppet number 2 comes in and does almost the exact same policies. Trump is probably not going to leave the borders open, but that's okay because they just let in 20 million, like the damage has already been done, so we'll close them for a little bit. We'll let the next Democrat leave them in. but the main thing that people need to understand is, number one, you're not going to be able to vote your way to freedom because they're both puppets working for the exact same system. And really, the other main thing that you've got to understand is we don't need government. Like everything the government does would be done better, faster, and cheaper by the free market. Nobody should have the ring of power because there shouldn't be a ring of power in the system that we have now. As long as there is a ruling class that has rights that you don't and has the ability to make up rules for others, that is always going to be hijacked by organized crime interests that have, a monetary interest in spending money to hijack that system. And so really the only ism politically that's fair for everybody is voluntarism. Voluntarism is the idea that all human relationships must be voluntary. Nobody gets the ring of power. Nobody has rights that other people don't have. And luckily for the world is a self-organizing system. It produces spontaneous order. And everything that people want from government would be provided better, faster, and cheaper by that free market and by real freedom. And so luckily, real freedom, delivers the goods. And we've known this for quite some time. There's a number of different think tanks in the United States, places in the United States, Cato Institute, and Canada, Fraser Institute, that have done work where they take a look at all the countries and they rank all of the countries on the degree of economic freedom and personal freedom that they have. And so what we know for kind of like a fact, going back with decades and decades of experience, is the more economic freedom and the more personal freedom you have, the wealthier and the healthier you are as a society. And so what I think is that if we maximize economic and personal freedom, is the way out. It's not, you're not going to be able to fix it. You're not going to be able to fix it by playing poker in a rigged poker game. We've got to, create the new system that is kind of outside of that. And so that's kind of the big question is how do you move to a new system and leave the old one behind? Because I don't think you're going to be able to fix the whole.
What countries rank high in their economic freedom?
Switzerland ranks high. Liechtenstein ranks high. The United States has actually been falling down the list for, quite some time. But in the United States, one of the things that you can take a look at is you can take a look at the individual states. And so in the United States, same Cato Institute that ranks all of the countries, also ranks the states as well. And you take a look at a state like New Hampshire, which they recently ranked as the freest state in the United States. New Hampshire has no personal income tax. It has no state state sales tax. It has one of the lowest tax and regulatory burdens in the country. And it has tremendous economic prosperity and growth. They have the lowest amount of children living in poverty. They have one of the highest wage rates in the country as a whole. And so that's just an example, one of the lowest unemployment rates. And so that's just an example of you can just look around in the individual states and you can see the ones that have, low tax and low regulatory burdens. That's where people are moving. They're moving out of states like New York and California that have very, very high tax rates. They're moving to these states like Florida, Texas, New Hampshire that have low taxes, low regulatory burdens, and you're seeing those economies thrive. And you're seeing, you're seeing the economic success that brings. At the same time, you can look over at New York and California, and you can see the stagnation that high tax, high regulatory environments produce.
All right. I want to get to COVID and to CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. We've talked about why they are concerning because of the surveillance and the control they have over your purchases. But how close are we actually to having CBDCs be the norm in the United States?
So we're in the United States, the banks in the United States, the money center banks are already in active trials on central bank digital currencies. And there's a number of pilot projects that are going on around the world. And so really, it really is the hill that everybody should die on, because if we have central bank digital currencies, in a way, it's game over. And so it gives the organized crime system that's using government to rob and control the population, it gives them a tool to be able to ensure that, like I said, that they can turn off people's ability to buy and sell. They're going to be able to tax and trace every nickel, that changes hands in the economy. There's not going to be any more, tax-free yard sales. There's not going to be any more, way to work under the table. There's not going to be any other, it's going to be a level of economic control that would be, just unbelievable to, to most Americans, coupled with, potentially coupled with a Chinese style, social credit score system, where if you're protesting the fake elections or the organized crime government, they will have the ability to turn off your ability to buy and sell, take the money out of your account, just prohibit you from, donating money to organizations like the Art of Liberty Foundation that are trying to expose, the criminality of the system as a whole. And so it really must be the hill that we die on. We cannot have central bank digital currencies. And so, they're, like I said, they're in trials right now, but it's something that has to be resisted. And the number one thing that you can do to resist it is simply pay cash every time you can, as much as you can, even for higher ticket items, especially when you're dealing with, local merchants, allowing them to kind of, save more of that at the same time as you're starting.
What technical infrastructure is needed to implement these CBDCs?
It's already there. I mean, they've already got, it's essentially the way that the banks transfer money and authorize payments, prove payments, and they've like that's already in place with the SWIFT system right now. And so switching it over to a CBDC infrastructure would not be very, very hard. It really is the people have to say no, to be able to stop and say, we're not going to do it, which is why I think that they would engineer some kind of economic, calamity, trying to force the population onto it, with a, it could be they could say it's a cyber attack. They could say it's another epidemic, pandemic, scamdemic, another, something that says, hey, we have to shut down the economy. We'll turn it back on, and we'll actually give you money. We'll actually give you universal basic income. We'll actually give you, the equivalent of the COVID stimmy checks, but you've got to take it in this central bank digital currency. And so I think that's the way, that's going to be the cheese that they're going to use to tempt the mice into the mousetrap, is they're going to offer, whether it's the equivalent of COVID stimmy checks or universal basic income, they're going to offer the population money, and the population has to say no. And so that's really, like, I think that's going to be the cheese in the mousetrap.
So how do we counter that? Just by using cash? By refusing it and using cash?
That's one way. And that's truly I think that's, the biggest way that we, the number one thing that everybody can do is to spend your money. Like you get this fake vote every 2 to 4 years, but you get to vote with your dollars every single day. And so don't do business with these monopoly companies. Don't watch the monopoly, news. Don't watch, don't buy their magazines. Don't buy their, don't buy their, waste your time books. Don't buy the things that are going to, imprison you. Don't buy their Coca-Cola and their Pepsi and the garbage that they're trying to poison you with. Spend your money with local merchants. Go to the farmer's market. Go spend your money. Don't shop at the chain stores. Even if you've got to pay a little bit more, to keep that money circulating in your community. That's the way that you can vote every single day and have a kind of a positive effect on your community. That's your real power.
It's funny. Our sponsor for today is a small farm in Romney, West Virginia called Triple E Farms. And they're shipping to all lower 48 states, and they're sponsoring this podcast today. So it's interesting you said that. I have over the past couple of years, I've wanted to make sure that I never have to depend on the food in the store because I don't know what's in it. And I never want to go to the store, not see anything there and be left with, oh no, what do I do now? And I've realized putting my money in with these small farmers who can take the money and then use it to, produce more produce or to build up their cattle. That is how I can actually help right now. And the food is better as well.
Oh yeah. We drove my fiance and I drove 20 minutes out of our way on Saturday to spend our money at a farmer's market. So to keep that system alive. And so know your farmer, like knowing your farmer, you can also, tell your farmer, look, I don't want any glyphosate in my food. I don't want you using it. I'm looking for farmers that aren't going to use Monsanto Roundup glyphosate herbicide or atrazine on the food. And if you're not going to do it, I'm going to go across to this other farm who will sell me non-glyphosated food. And so that is how you have real control over what you put in your body and real control over your food system is by knowing your farmer and having that one-on-one relationship.
That's right. So I just wanted to touch on COVID really quickly and then ask my final questions. What did the influx of printed money do to the economy during COVID? We saw a huge transfer of wealth.
So really the two things that I'm known for, just to give your audience an update, is the book Government, the Biggest Scam in History, exposed at government-scam.com. But the number two thing that I'm known for is an investigation that we did into who was behind the COVID, called Solving COVID, the COVID-19 eugenics vaccine drug scam timeline. And in this timeline, we believe that the COVID was the engineered reason for the stimulus and the bailouts and for the Fed to intervene in the treasury markets, which they did, to the tune of over $1 trillion in 2020. They were actively buying bills, bonds, and notes and open, under emergency powers. And so we think that again, so you're able to use this media system, this monopoly media system, and the hierarchical control of public health services. So from the WHO, through the NIH, CDC, the NIAID, down to state and local health departments, there's a hierarchical, control. And so it was the hierarchical control of the monopoly media, the hierarchical control of these regulatory captured agencies to trick the population into thinking that there was really a pandemic going on. The ultimate goal was two of them. Goal number one was we're stealing the money. We're stealing, whether it be, vaccines that we don't need, or whether it be, PPE that nobody needs. We're going to hand money to companies that were pre-positioned, in the scam to be able to sell diagnostic test kits, PPE, vaccines that people don't need. But ultimately, what I believe it was a eugenics operation, because the people that are running this system are eugenicists. They believe in that the world is overpopulated and it needs to be depopulated. And so what I did in the COVID-19, Solving COVID, the COVID-19 eugenics vaccine drug scam timeline is take the timeline back to the founding of eugenics, and then the Rockefeller Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation, some of the greatest fortunes that the world has ever known were left to eugenics. And if you trace it back and start there, you can actually find that it's the same people were involved in the COVID as have been involved in eugenics for over a century. And so it never really went, never really let eugenics, got a bad rap after the crimes of Nazi Germany were exposed after World War II, but it just went underground, and it's been operating in the background, and they've been running variations of the COVID. AIDS was eugenics. Swine flu vaccine was eugenics. Avian flu vaccine was eugenics. And so they've been running essentially the same scam for decades and decades and decades. The COVID has been the biggest really since AIDS. AIDS was probably number 2, but we're going to trick the population into thinking that there's a new, disease going around. We're going to force people into medications and therapeutics that make them worse. We're going to point to the illness and the sickness that's caused by the therapeutics and the medication as proof that there's that there's really a novel disease going around, and then we're going to make money off the back end, because remdesivir, in the case of AIDS, only AZT is being offered for this. In the case of the COVID, you can only get ventilators and remdesivir and certain approved things. And then that's how they've been making money off the back end, at the same time that they're making society sick. They're killing off the weak. They're keeping the social security system, solvent a little bit longer. They're getting, they're reducing the global population by forcing an injection that was designed to hurt people in there. They already had these quote unquote vaccines ready to roll. The COVID was the stage play that forced it into everybody's arm.
So we are seeing that the illusions continue. When do you think people will have had enough when they start realizing all this?
Well, I mean, luckily, so there are a lot of people that have had enough. Like, I'm one of them, you're one of them. I think we probably know lots of people that have had enough. And so the good thing that I saw, we helped organize, resistance to the COVID. I was in 30 different states, in 2020, and like 20 different states in 2021, organizing resistance to COVID. At every single place that I went, there were people that understood how they were being lied to, that understood that it's the media was in on it. And so the good news message is there is a resistance out there. People need to find it. They need to develop it themselves. They need to get off the couch. They need to put down the remote control. They need to get active. They need to get together with their family, their friends, their neighbors, and they need to say, hey, what is going on? And they need to figure it out. Hopefully my book, Government, the Biggest Scam in History, can help, the solving COVID, the COVID-19 eugenics vaccine drug scam timeline. That's what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to, make it easy for people to understand, what the scam is and how it's being, played. The main thing that you got to understand, I think the one of the main pillars is that the media has been monopolized, and they're controlling the information society receives so that society can be dumbed down and tax farmed. And once you really understand that there's a man behind the curtain in the media, that helps a lot. Like, that is really like, okay, the entire media, and I'm talking about, it is the entire media, and it's algorithmic censorship. It's Facebook, it's Twitter/X, it's YouTube, it's, all of these platforms are designed to distract and deceive you. And then just really understanding that aspect of it helps people turn it off and realize that the revolution is not going to be recommended for you by YouTube. It's not going to be televised. It really is up to you to turn off the television and be the change you want to see in the world. And that's all that is. And if everybody just gets a little bit active, everybody just does 5%, just takes 5% of their attention away from entertainment and puts it on your shifts 5% of their attention from mindless entertainment to being somewhat productive and getting information out to others or understanding what's going on yourself. That would be huge. That would be absolute. Like, we would change the world. We could just switch 5%.
It's
People's
true
time and
living.
attention.
It's true living. I say this all the time to my children. It's better. It's fun to watch things like even watch live entertainment. It's fun. But being on the stage, that's even better because that's you doing it. Instead of watch, just be it.
So when everybody was locked down into COVID, we had a resistance group in California that was having a blast. We were actually reopening the beaches. We were tearing down all of the tape and everything like that. We would have beach parties where we would reopen the beach in Santa Cruz, and we'd have 60, 70 people. We'd go out with the bullhorn, we're reopening this beach, and we'd all walk onto the beach together, and we would have a party. There would be people playing guitar, there would be people surfing, there'd be people playing badminton, there would be people hanging out, and we were in the sun, and the police would come, and when there's 60, 70 people, there's nothing they can do. There's absolutely nothing they can do. We beat the police in Santa Cruz, California. We beat the police 8 weeks out of 8 weeks where they would come and try and shut us down, and we would just ignore them. And so tyranny really counts on the people doing nothing, but you would be surprised, number one, how much fun it is to get active and to hang out with amazing people to meet the other people that can see through the lies of the television and the media and things like that. But like while everybody else was locked down, we were having a blast. So much fun.
I should have been hanging out with you.
Oh, you would have had a blast. I actually had multiple people in our resistance group in California that said, my social life improved during the COVID.
Well, Etienne, this has been a fascinating conversation. I have one last question for you. If the average American citizen could do one thing to combat the corruption that we have talked about today, what would it be?
Turn off the television, find the authentic voices of the developing alternative media, and just move your time and attention away. So the word entertainment, the etymology of that is enter means to enter, tain means to hold or possess, and mente is the mind. Okay, so to enter the mind and hold it and possess it. And the number one thing you can do is just turn off the old world and go and find it's harder to get. You've got to go to the self-directed internet. It's not going to be on the remote control, but there is an entire other world out there. You just got to go and find it. Find the authentic voices of the developing alternative media. I have a list in my book, Government, the Biggest Scam in History, of kind of trusted alternative, media voices. But just move away from the people that are trying to distract and deceive you to the people that are trying to help you, and you'll find an entirely new world waiting for you. And that world is amazing.
Well, thank you, Etienne. It's been great having you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for what you do. We're all in it together. We must all hang together, or we'll surely all hang separate.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Please like, comment, subscribe to, and share our podcasts. Visit our website where you can sign up for our latest newsletters and become a member of Feds for Freedom at fedsforfreedom.org.